Welcome back to What the Fertility Season 3. Today we have Lisa Ashworth with us to talk about her 10-year journey to conceive, including 5 rounds of IVF with a diagnosis of unexplained infertility. Lisa became pregnant with triplets at age 40, and she has now written a book to share her story and the tools that have worked for her. Her book is called Fertility, Mindset, and Meltdowns. Welcome, Lisa.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, ladies. Nice to see you both.
Nice to see you. I am very interested to hear your story and your journey. So if you want to,
Okay.
I guess, start from the beginning for listeners to hear.
Yeah, sure. My goodness. Well, so yeah, it took me 10 years to have a baby, really. I started when I was about 30, started trying, got married a couple of years before, just started trying like you do, and soon realized that, it wasn't happening, and had a few tests and things, everything was fine. And just sort of carried on. And then after a year or so, realized that there was something wrong. So we went and had more tests, and sadly got the sort of diagnosis that it was unexplained infertility, which is obviously really difficult to deal with in itself because, there's nothing you can fix. And I am a bit of a doer. I like to sort of fix things and get on with things. So that was hugely frustrating. So we carried on trying a bit. We did a couple of IUIs, which is the kind of halfway house to IVF. I'm sure you know all about that. But sadly, at the same time that this was all going on, my marriage was starting to crumble. So this was my first marriage, the first half of the fertility journey. And it was just coming to an end, really. And I think we were very different, but what we both really wanted was a baby. And I think we were hoping that the baby would come along and would make everything okay. And sadly, the baby didn't come along. So when I was about 35, actually, we split up, which was sad, but actually the best thing for both of us. Then I had about a year or so on my own. And obviously, life goes on around you at this time. So all my best friends were married. They'd all had children. Some of them had 3 children, in the time that I was trying. So I think I had about a year or so, a year on my own. And then it was very difficult for me to meet people because I was working so hard and all my friends were having children. So nobody wanted to do anything. So I had no problem really in signing up to a dating site and dabbled in that for a while. It was very different back then. It's not like the swipe left and right. It was sort of 15 years ago. It was very, very tame. I don't think I could cope with it now. Anyway, I met my now husband on Match.com, and I'd just cancelled my membership because I just wanted to have a break. So he was my last date. He'd literally just come on. So I was his first date. So we met and anyway, hit it off straight away. It was kind of like an instant connection. We got on really well and everything just happened quite quickly, and I think when you're a bit older, you just want to get on with everything. So we moved in together. We actually got engaged quite quickly and we both wanted children again. So with the problems that had happened with me before, at the back of my mind, we started just sort of trying, just seeing what would happen. And I suppose a little bit of me hoped that it might be different this time around and maybe with somebody else, and I was so happy. But sadly, it wasn't. So, started all the tests and things, still nothing wrong, which is so frustrating. So they quite quickly suggested that we do IVF. So I'm kind of about 37 at this point. So we started down the IVF route. Did the first one, didn't work. Did the second one, fell pregnant, which was incredible. But sadly, I didn't get past the 6-7 week scan. I miscarried, which was really upsetting, obviously, because I was so close. But after I'd got over it, I remember thinking, do you know what? I'm actually really close. Maybe it's going to work now. I'm so close. So we did another one quite quickly after that. And unfortunately, that one didn't work at all. So we decided to take a break at that point. We'd been putting off our wedding. So we had a lovely winter wedding in England, lots of candles in a nice old country place, which was lovely. Went on honeymoon, came back really relaxed, thought, right, this is it. So did the fourth one, spent a lot of money at this point, obviously. And that one didn't work. And at this point, I was coming up to 40. I was literally a couple of months off 40. The fourth one hadn't worked. And I was just absolute rock bottom. I had a bit of a meltdown at that point. Because, you know, as you know, when you're going through this, it's just so hard mentally. And, you know, all you want is a baby. And it wasn't happening. And I was starting to think, is it ever going to happen? I just didn't know what to do. And I thought something's got to change. You know, I can't just keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And I was finding it really difficult to cope with work. I had quite a busy senior job. I was like in a senior role in HR for a big travel company. So I was trying to do IVF, you know, whilst holding down a big job as well. And I think I was just physically knackered. My body was drained. And
Sure.
I think I just took a bit of time off work at that point and didn't know what to do. And we just moved house, so I was sort of throwing myself into this house project. And I think I decided to take a bit of a break from work. I managed to negotiate a little bit of time off. And so I just kind of tried to recover, and I was doing, you know, the house and everything, but just didn't know what to do. And then I started reading. I was trying to find something that would get me out of this hole, this mental hole, and just give me some guidance of what to do next. I've always been quite into self-help books and things anyway, so I love reading that sort of stuff. And I started reading a lot about mindset, and I realised that although on the outside I was doing everything I possibly could to get pregnant, you know, I was taking all my vitamins, I was looking after myself, cut down on alcohol, you know, doing all the IVFs, taking fertility drugs. But I realised that inside I'd lost the faith, you know, and I was kind of going into an IVF thinking, this isn't going to work. Deep down, this isn't going to work. You know, this is never going to happen to me. There's something wrong with me. See pregnant women around, immediately thinking, well, that's never going to be me. But all this thinking was so entrenched inside me. I didn't even know I was doing it. And it kind of hit me. It was a bit of a light bulb moment, really. And I thought, I've got to sort this out because this is just not helping me at all. So I was reading up on it a bit more, and I kind of was trying out some different mindset tools and techniques to try and change what was going on in my head, you know. And it was going quite well, and I was starting to feel better, and I was feeling happier, and I was sort of enjoying the house project, and I wasn't even thinking about doing another IVF. And it was the summer. It was lovely and sunny for a couple of months that it is in England. And then my husband said, let's have one more go. And I was like, oh, I just don't know if I can, you know, it's just really difficult. I just don't know if I want to go there. But he was sort of kept mentioning it. And then my mother-in-law rang up and said she would pay for it if we had one more go. So I was kind of like, the universe is telling me here, I've got to have another go. So anyway, in this new state of mind, I thought, right, we're doing it again. I'm doing something different. So I was kind of in a really different place mentally. I went and saw the consultant. I said, I am not doing it unless you do something different. There has to be more tests. There has to be something you can do to look at why this isn't working for me. I'm 40 years old. This is my last time. And it turns out there were more tests I could have. So in the UK, they have what they call the miscarriage test. So we have the NHS here where you don't pay for your treatment unless you go privately. And on the NHS, you only get offered these tests when you've had 3 miscarriages. So I'd obviously only had one. So I didn't even know about these tests. But he said, oh, you can have these tests if you pay for them. I was like, oh, okay. So we had these tests. And it did throw up a couple of really minor things, which he said, well, this could be impacting it, or it might not. So he said, I am going to tweak things a little bit, and he tweaked the drugs slightly, and there was a couple of things that were different. I also had acupuncture that time, and I was in a different place mentally. Anyway, then on the IVF, because they knew it was our last one, they said, would you like to put 3 embryos back in?
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Then no, we would not. Thank you very much. And they said, well, look, the chances of all 3 working is very, very slim, given your track record, given your age. They said, go home and think about it overnight. So we went and thought about it, and a lot of soul searching that night. Shall we do this or not? So we decided, yes, we would, because we thought this is the last one, let's give it everything. But when we came in the next day, sadly, there were only 2 embryos that were high enough quality to put back in. I was never one of these people that produced loads of eggs. I just never did. So it was always a bit of a, God, are there going to be any that are good this time? So there were these 2 left out of a batch of about 5. And I was thinking, well, they're going to be the best of a bad bunch. And I thought, no, positive, let's try the new tools, let's move on. So anyway, we put these 2 embryos back in, got through the 2-week wait, and I was pregnant at the end of it. And remarkably, what had happened was, not only had it worked, but one of the embryos split into 2.
Oh, that's so crazy. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
This
So
is
I had
insane.
identical twin boys and a little girl.
Oh my gosh. That is incredible.
At 41 I was actually when I had them.
That is really the coolest thing. Oh my goodness. And especially because it was 3, and then they said, that
I know.
And it wound up being the 3. So that, I mean, it was just so meant to be.
And you get a girl and boys. Oh my goodness. You shared like 11
years. I know.
Beautifully. There's so much to unpack there. So you're a mom of 3.
So I'm a mum of 3 now. They've just started at secondary school.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So we've had a crazy 10 years. It's been wonderful. I just said to them now, because they're here, obviously Saturday afternoon, I just said, do not come in, do not disturb.
That's so
I love it.
Oh my gosh. I was like trying to remember like parts of the story that I wanted to dive a little bit deeper in, but it was like so good. I didn't want to interrupt. So you tell listeners like it was like a 1 or 2 year situation, but I mean, that was 10 years that
it was. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going through that. And so I guess going back to like when your first marriage ended, I mean, to your point, you mentioned it like, well, maybe a new partner is going to like change things. What was kind of that process, I guess, for you coming out of infertility from your first marriage? And then were you immediately like, I know I'm going to continue treatment. Like, I know I want children.
Well, it was really hard to come out of that marriage because I knew the marriage wasn't right, but I also wanted a baby. And I thought, if I don't, if I come out of this, I might not have that chance again. So it was a real gamble. And I remember thinking, I'm just too old at 35, which looking back now is just bonkers. But it was really hard. But I think I wasn't happy. So I just thought I've got to get happy first. And then I knew I wanted to carry on with it, but I was trying not to think too far in the future. I thought I've just got to do this, and then we'll see what happens. But it was a long time, 10 years.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, I asked that just because we've had other listeners that have kind of shared similar sentiments of, well, I was just going to stay in the marriage because I wanted a baby more. And so I think that's like really beautiful that you were able to kind of heal and move on and find another partner. I'm really interested, especially because you wrote a book about it. What were those tips and mindset adjustments that you really held on to specific for, fertility and self-help?
Yeah. So, there's a few different things really. There's lots of different things. I think, partly like, when people are going through this, you're so anxious, you're so worried. that your head is filled with the anxiety of it. So I realized that I was constantly thinking about what could go wrong and not thinking about what could go right, you know. So there was a part I did around being able to imagine myself pregnant, like it was going to happen. You know, if you have any other project in life, you know, like if you move house, you've got a vision of the house you want and you're on a mission to find that house. Whereas what I think and a lot of women do with this scenario is they can't go there because it's so painful, you know, to think about yourself pregnant. So I did a lot of visualizing myself pregnant and what would it be like and what would it feel like. And I mean, you'll laugh. One of the things I did was I cut out a picture of this pregnant woman and then stuck my head on the top and put it on the fridge.
I love
And
that.
I love that so much.
And my little smiling face on this bump.
You make the best point because it's so painful probably when you're going through infertility, and then to like see that or like picture it every single day. I think I shared it on the podcast, like a screenshot. So when I had multiple miscarriages, and when I got to the point where I was like, I got to do something different. Mine was visualization of every morning I'm going to walk in and look in the mirror and just imagine that I'm pregnant. And I just like want to imagine that. And it's so difficult because it's hard. Yeah, it's the most thing that you want and you can't have it, but it does kind of change your mindset.
Absolutely. Because then if you can allow yourself to get excited about it, it sort of then programs you, because then you feel better about the whole thing and you think about the possibility of what if this could happen. And so you just then feel better. And when you feel better, you do more, you know, you go out there and you make things happen with your fertility journey and everything. But the other thing as well is, you know, when you have this voice, and I call it the monkey voice, that sort of this negative voice that's sitting on your shoulder saying all these horrible things that you wouldn't say to anybody else. You know, if a friend was going through fertility, you wouldn't say, well, that's never going to happen to you, you know, but we talk to ourselves so horribly. So the other thing was around, you know, having like a reassuring voice. So when I heard that voice coming in, kind of like the best, what would your best friend say to you to reassure you? It's okay, your time will come, or your baby's on its way, and having something to reassure you. So that was another thing. And then just trying to be more mindful and present and enjoy the moment rather than just worrying about everything the whole time. But it's not easy.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. I think listeners will really, that will just be really encouraging for them for sure. But okay, so I know Kat mentioned that you do have a book, and so it is called Fertility, Mindset, and Meltdowns, right? And that is recently released. It was this past November. I wish you could see it, but it's so cute.
Oh, that's so let's hear about this process.
Yeah. Oh, so what happened was, after the children were born, I'd been in a corporate job for many years and I was in HR. So, but I'd always wanted to be a coach. And so I then retrained as a coach, and I do career coaching now, is kind of what I do. But on the side, I sort of had this sort of hobby business of helping women going through fertility. So I was kind of coaching them on all the things that had worked for me. And I just did it through word of mouth and people I knew. And it wasn't a big thing, but it got really good feedback. And, you know, and then a few of the ladies got pregnant. And I think it was just around the end of lockdown, really, I was thinking, do you know what, I'm going to write all this stuff down, because I've always liked writing anyway. And that's how it started. It was a bit of a brain dump at first. But what it is, it's obviously a bit of my story. It's kind of like, you know, it's like a little gift really to anybody going through this process of just sort of holding your hand all the way through it. There's a bit of my story, but then it's very practical self-help, lots of tools and exercises and tips to manage your mindset. Because when I was going through it, especially being unexplained, I'd go into the bookshop, there was loads of medical books, you know, which wasn't really relevant to me because there was nothing wrong. Loads of nutritional books and things like that, you know, fertility diets, but absolutely nothing about managing it mentally. And I just felt that was missing really. So this book, I mean, yeah, it was released in November and it's had amazing response. So Instagram is where I talk about it really. And I think that's where I found you ladies on there. But, I've had some lovely messages from complete strangers saying it's really helped them as they go into their next round of IVF. It's been great,
And
really
let's
amazing.
tag you. Your social media is at Lisa Ashworth Fertility. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Okay. I'm excited. I'm going to buy that book for sure. I think,
Oh,
yeah, everything that you've said is just so, I think Amanda and I relate. Like we were gonna write a book and then we were like, oh, we're not good at that. Let's just do the podcast.
oh, it's not easy. Oh my God, it takes ages.
Yeah, because it's the same. I mean, for Amanda and I too, like I think women that have had really beautiful and long journeys to parenthood, they just like have this desire to share it and share with other people. And so to your point, brain dump, Amanda and I were like, let's get everything just out there and see what we can do to help other women. But Amanda has a counseling background, and so this season I think this season specifically we've really brought on a lot of professionals and individuals that have really focused on that mental health space specific to fertility.
Yeah,
So
it's such a big part of it, but it's such a private journey that people find it so hard to talk about it. And Instagram's interesting because my followers on there, most of them are anonymous fertility accounts, which is amazing. You have that platform you can share, but you can still remain completely private. And sometimes people give updates on there that they haven't even told their family and stuff. But it isn't easy to talk about. And, a lot of the celebrities will talk about it after it's happened to them, which is great, but it'd be nice if people could talk about it when they were going through it. So it's hard. It's really hard.
It is. And I think, I think to your point, there's just my personal experience with therapy or treatment in terms of like the mental aspect of it. It was never, this was like 5 years ago, maybe not that long ago, but it was never just really focused to fertility. And so to have that resource that says like, these are things that you can do when you're trying to have a baby, it's so different than like anything else that's ever been out there. Or this is how you can grieve even from loss. It's just a totally different loss. And I know you've experienced it too, Lisa, but it is a different loss than a family member. And so those resources are so lacking. I love this.
I know. I'm still gonna buy it and read it. Yeah.
I think it's on Amazon in the US, and I think is it Barnes and Noble? Is that a US?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, congratulations. That's so exciting for you.
Thank you. No, it's been amazing actually. It's funny how the worst thing that happened to you, because I'll never forget what I went through. It was so hard. But the worst thing can become the best thing, really. And I do believe that everything happens at the right time in the end. It doesn't feel like that when you're on this journey at all, and you're on the floor crying and another disappointment. I mean, it's heartbreaking, but it does work out in the end. There's lots of benefit. Obviously, I was 41 when I then had 3 children, so I was older. But there's lots of benefits to that as well as downsides to that. So, it does all work out in the end.
I think your story just provides so much hope too. I mean, I have personal people in my life that are mid-30s and they're like, it's just not going to happen for me. And so you just kept persevering and going and trying every little tunnel. And
my God, yeah.
I hate to say that mental health's the alternative route, right? But it's like, you know what, I'm going to like focus on my thoughts and my mind and see how I can like internally become healthier. And it's sad that like Western culture, that is just like the last thing that people do. So maybe your book can
I know.
move that up to the first thing.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right, because it is the last on the list. But the crazy thing is, when you go into IVF, you're investing so much, A, financially, you're spending so much money on it. And then B, physically, what you're putting yourself through is immense. And then time, juggling it all, sometimes people have to take time out of busy jobs. So you're making all those sacrifices but you've got to do it mentally as well. I think people forget about that part. You've got to be
Yeah.
all in, you know, and I realized that when I look back, I wasn't all in. I thought I was, but I wasn't. And I was beating myself up a bit inside. And understandably, after years and years of disappointment, it just becomes the default to think like that. You know, and
Absolutely.
I put a mask on. I talk about in the book, I had my mask, you know, even some of my closest family, when they've read the book, they said, I just didn't realize that's what it was like for you. I didn't realize that's what you were going through. And I was like, well, because I've had the mask on, didn't I?
Gosh, that's so true. Oh, I'm so excited to read your book. I'm like literally going to go right on the order now.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
Well, we will
Oh,
for sure link everything like in our bio, your book, your Instagram, so everyone could for sure be able to see it. Is the best way to reach out to you if anyone had questions would be on Instagram?
yeah, I think so. That's probably the easiest. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect. Well, is there anything from your book or just from the last 10 years of just when you went through fertility and all of that? Is there any last minute things that you wanted to share with listeners? Just any like insight or tips, or I know that's a big
It's
question.
so hard. I think for me, you know, it's never too late, and you have these milestones, like, you know, when I was coming out of my first marriage, and I just thought, well, you know, at 35, I thought I was too old to start again, you know, so that was a bigger one. Another one was 40. Turning 40 is such a mental milestone, isn't it? Because you think everything's just going to fall off a cliff after 40, and it's just not true, you know. I mean, one of my best friend's sisters, she got pregnant at 49. She thought she was going through the menopause, and then she had a baby. You know, so you just don't know.
Wow.
And
That's
the thing is,
so
when you go to the doctors, you know, and they talk to you about all the statistics, it's very much the average. So, you know, average for my age, my chances were low, all my previous attempts low. But, you know, you sit in the waiting room and you talk to other women, and it's far from average what you hear. You know, women who are like early 20s or late 20s, even when you're supposed to be at your best for fertility, and they can't produce any eggs, or women who are sort of early 40s and have overstimulated. Well, that's not average, is it? So I think just try and just think about your own journey rather than get too drawn into the average and what the norm is. And because it's just, you know, sometimes, like, they couldn't explain what happened to me, that I had 5 attempts and then I suddenly got pregnant and one split, you know. So how do you explain that medically?
Yeah.
And I'll never know what made the difference on that last one. It could be my mindset, it could be the acupuncture, it could be the tweak of the drugs. I'll never know, but it worked.
I couldn't have scripted that answer better. Just last week, we said, we were just like saying, like, what are our ins and outs of fertility? And our number one, like, in this year is just drop the timelines, drop them. Social media is great, but you gotta stop comparing yourself to other people. And
Oh
I
my
think
God.
you just made the point. Like, for me, I had 6 miscarriages, unexplained infertility. All of my babies were genetically normal. And now I have a 1.5-year-old. They don't know how that happened. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, what is it? And that story is not like in a pretty box and like put in a
No.
story the same way. And yours too. It's just like, social media is so good. And I think this is our whole why behind the podcast, is get these non-average stories out there to provide hope and to provide a new timeline. I don't even want to say timeline, but like just a new perspective on this could also happen to you, or your story could be
Exactly.
the one that you tell other people.
Yeah, exactly. You're so right about social media. Like, it's great that women and men have got an outlet now that they can talk about all this. But I do think there's a word of caution in it as well, because there's a lot of failure on there. And thinking about that positive mindset, is it good to be surrounded by that the whole time? I think you just got to be careful, maybe dip in and out rather than become too entrenched in it, because you've got to think of yourself and your mindset and your journey and what's best for you.
Right.
But it's not easy.
I used to look at, it was kind of the trend a few years ago. People would do those boards and they'd have like the number of eggs they got and the ones, and they would just kind of be like, And
Yep.
I would just like, when I was going through my weight after my retrievals, I would just like screenshot everybody's results. And then I got like one embryo. And I'm like, oh, I just failed. And so to your point, just creating boundaries and barriers and not comparing yourself to other people's stories, because
Yeah.
three of us ended up with children in very different ways. And I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it only takes one, yeah. It only takes one little egg.
It
True.
does. Or in your case, 2 for 3.
Yeah,
Oh
right.
my God. Exactly. I caught up with everybody in one go. That's my
That's-
mother-in-law said. She said she bought 2 and she got 1 free.
Oh, that
That's
is amazing.
adorable. Well, Lisa, thank you so much. I know Amanda and I just
Oh.
deeply enjoyed hearing your story, and we appreciate you sharing your experience and your book and what you've learned with our listeners. We will make sure all of this is in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can go buy Lisa's book, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. We'll link it anywhere else we can find it. And then we will also link her social media tag at Lisa Ashworth Fertility.
Thank you so much, ladies. It's been lovely to meet you.